Today, we continue on our sermon series, The Sacred Journey. How many of you were here last week and joined us as we talked about the Enneagram Type 8? So one thing you'll notice really quick, whether you think about you're all for Enneagram or you're still kind of hesitant, one thing is really clear is that you'll notice different energies between Alicia, who's an Enneagram Type 8, and me, who's an Enneagram Type 9. So you'll automatically, there's different ways of being in the world. So today we're going to continue on with the Type 9 and 1. And I forgot the slide, but just to recap a little bit, the Enneagram is a typing system. You can see the symbol on the bottom, and if you look at the triangle on the very top point would be 9. And if you go all the way around, technically there's 9 different types of people. And I shared this last week. There's lots more. The Enneagram is like an onion where you can dive in and go farther and further. So we're not suggesting that all 7 billion people can be reduced to 9 different types. No 2 types are the same, so no 2 9s will be exactly the same. But they'll share a lot of same motivations and core things behind that. So we hope that through this series, 2 things happen. One, we gain a more compassion, understanding that we're not wired the same way, we think differently than others, and that's good. We don't need uniformity, but we need healthier versions of who we are. Does that make sense? And 2, we hope that we will grow in health as we discover more about ourselves. I wanted to mention a couple of things. This past week, I had some conversations with people. It's always a learning process for me. Life is a learning process for all of us. One thing that stood out to me was that the Enneagram is complex. So when you first get into it, don't be surprised if it's difficult to understand and you're like, wait, this isn't easy for me to understand. The Enneagram really was developed over hundreds of years as a spiritual formation tool for people. So it was much more relational, one-on-one. What has happened recently in the West, because what we like to do is we like to go online, punch in a couple things, answer a few questions, and it spit out my type. I'm the same way, so that's what we like. It's hard for the Enneagram to act like that because it was never meant to be that way. And so if you go on, we posted tests online and different things you can take. They're never 100% accurate, so don't trust them. Let that be a guiding way for you. And if you find you take a couple different tests and you're like, I'm a 1, I'm a 5, which one am I? Sit with each of those. The process isn't just, I am this type and now I'm boxed in again. The point of this is to explore and become more self-aware. So you can ask yourself, does this make sense for me? If I sit with this, does that make sense? And then maybe I'll sit with another type. And does that make sense for me? The second thing, I am a personality nerd. I love personality stuff. I have talked to a couple people actually that helped me grow in understanding that sometimes personalities can be used in harmful ways. And so I wanted to just pause for a moment and say, I haven't personally seen that, but I've talked to people who've experienced that in very destructive ways. So there should be some caution when we use these types of things. It's not meant for us to go out there and put people in boxes. Again, it's meant for our own self-awareness. And hopefully, sometimes, I think there can be some help when my partner is this type, we're this type. These are different ways we see the world. Maybe my boss might be, but be very careful because it can be used in very destructive ways. Does that make sense? All right, so today we're going to begin with the Enneagram Type 9. Can we go ahead and kill the lights? We have a short introduction video to Type 9.
A good quote that gets the 9 energy is, don't get upset over things that you can't change. When a 9 enters in the room, they are probably the least likely to create waves or disturb whatever's going on in the room. Enneagram Type 9 is often known as the peacemaker, and partly because they actually do not like conflict. If an Enneagram 9 was like in a call center and they were taking in complaints and somebody called in and they started like swearing at them, the Enneagram 9 would just hang up. They would not deal with it. Some people would swear back, but Enneagram would just end it, just done. I actually went to a conference where it talked about how each type would cross a stream, and some would swim against the current, and some would jump in with style. The Enneagram 9 would just drift. Or if you're talking to Enneagram 9, they'll avoid conflict, but they may actually feel like anger, but it's not something that they acknowledge, so they'll keep it down. So a response that might happen if you get into actual conflicts, it'll be kind of like a Cold War, and there may be some passive-aggressive kind of responses to that. Nines, when they actually are in conflict, when they don't want to be, they may be passive-aggressive towards it. People always get along with nines because they're just very likable people. They're just very easy for all types of people to get along with. And so if you have a friend that's just like the glue that pulls all your other friends together, who just seems to be friends with all of them, it's probably a 9, likely. Another song that would capture the 9 energy is Don't You Worry About a Thing by Bob Marley. That's a great one. The speaking style of the Enneagram 9 is more of like the epic. It's like layered myths because they can just float through all the aspects of the story and give you just this big whopping myth. They can go from one topic to another and just kind of meander through a conversation as well. Some famous 9s that I particularly like are Carl Jung, Walt Disney, and George Lucas, who all create like these big myths, these big stories that have, stood the test of time. Carl Jung is all about the monomyth. Joseph Campbell would probably be a 9, I imagine, based off of that. And Walt Disney, just the epic come together of all these different aspects of life.
When I was a kid, there was a lot of conflict in my family because of my brother, and so I made a vow never to rock the boat, period. So never to cause conflict, just keep the peace and do whatever I need to. So I merged with my mom, I merged with whoever I needed to in order to not rock the boat. And it's not working real well as an adult. So I've had to learn how to deal with conflict, how to access my anger in a healthy way, and how to understand what that means. I didn't rebel as a teenager, none of that, because I didn't feel like I was ever allowed to assert myself. I'm not allowed to have needs. I don't matter. I basically don't exist with needs.
I'm very skilled at keeping the peace. I'm very skilled at seeing everybody else's viewpoints around me and bridging the gap. Part of moving to a healthier place for me is trying not to meld in with those other people around me, and to take the time in this space to realize who I am and my wants and needs and desires. And if you know 9s and if they have the courage to do any kind of conflict or addressing you about something, to just know that that's really taking a lot out of them. Because it is not natural.
Right.
We have to be really purposeful, and we have to really struggle, and sometimes literally, it can take us days to get to the point where we're really ready to discuss something with somebody that might in our hearts feel like conflict. So if you have a peacemaker or a 9 that is willing to do that with you, that's gold, that's treasure. Be careful with them.
Thank you, Angie, for putting those videos together, and for Anthony to being up there and speaking on behalf of us 9s. Power to you. I'm a type 9. Next slide. 9s are sometimes called the peacemaker, other times called the mediator. One thing to understand about 9s are our core motivation, and this really captures the Enneagram, is to bring about peace. Also, sometimes to avoid conflict. And so you see here, as in with all the types, there's a positive aspect and there's also the sort of negative aspect. 9s are really good at mediating and bringing people together and working for peace, but in unhealth, and oftentimes it's very hard for 9s to do this, is we can just skirt around things. I'd rather avoid the conflict, pretend like it's not there. One thing I didn't mention that I think is true of the Enneagram and why sometimes it's harder too, like if you take a Myers-Briggs, anybody took a Myers-Briggs test before or anything like that? So it places you in an either or. Either you're an introvert or you're an extrovert. For the Enneagram, it starts with this assumption we're all of these types. You just tend to gravitate towards one type. So you'll find things in here, hopefully, that'll stand out for you, even if you're not a type 9. And also, I would guess that you would know a type 9 or have a type 9 in your life at some point. So it helps to kind of be aware this is their motivation. A story to kind of illustrate this point. Our core motivation to bring about peace or to avoid conflict. This last week, I was taking my car in to get the oil changed. The name of that business will remain anonymous. And I pulled up. I usually I schedule an appointment in advance, but I was like, no, that's okay. So I pulled up. They greeted me great. Oh, I'll go find somebody for you. He came back. He was like, oh, you know what? They're running a little bit behind. It'll be a few minutes. They got to work out some paperwork. Can I have you pull forward? So I pulled forward. I lost track of time because I was looking on my phone for some stuff and just researching things. And then I looked down, and it had been 35 minutes. And I felt the little tension within me. Nines will know, like the little anger kind of bubbling up. And so I waited, and I was like, what do I do? 5 more minutes passed, nobody came. I'm like, I'm getting so mad. So I got out of my car, and I started yelling. No, I'm just kidding. That would not be a 9 way of handling conflict. So as Anthony said, if somebody's yelling, they'll just, all right, I'm done with that conversation right now. So I got in my car, and I just drove off. I'm like, all right, fine. And I left, and I went to a coffee shop to work on my sermon about type 9s. And I was like, it was in my face. Oh no, I just did that passive-aggressive avoid conflict thing. Ugh. It's like, okay, so what I should do is kind of face that, okay? So it helps for a 9 to know that. I want to avoid conflict, so I sent an email, because a phone call is just too much to deal with sometimes, so I sent an email. I was really nice. I was like, hey, this is what happened. I'm going to take my business somewhere else unless you give me a discount on my next oil change, which is hard for a 9 to do. But I was like, I just don't think that's right. Somebody called me, so I told them the story, and they were really kind. They said, I need to transfer you to someone else. That other person hasn't got back to me yet, so I'm still without an oil change. But I have decided that if they don't contact me, I will go somewhere else and do that. It would be very unlikely that I would have gone through that if I didn't go to the coffee shop and say, okay, I'm working on a type 9. Oh, I'm staring in the mirror. I should face that. So 9's tendency is to avoid conflict, to just, okay, pretend like it's not there. But we all know that eventually that thing will kind of bubble back up. Okay? So 9's, it's important for us to be aware of our tendency to do that. Next slide. Some adjectives that describe 9's. They're adaptable, harmony-seeking, pleasing, affable, steadfast, comfortable, accepting, humble, easygoing, caring, inclusive, and steady. They can sometimes be or act in unhealthy ways, conflict avoidant, resistant, self-forgetting, stubborn, or indecisive. So that just gives you a picture of this type of personality. This, by the way, captures me extremely well, which is hard because I'm like, oh, I'm just exposing who I am to everyone else. You all know now. The virtue, on the next slide, the virtue, which means that the gift that the 9 personality brings when they're in health is right action, where they step out and do the right thing despite feeling like there might be some conflict. The vice, the thing that they tend towards, is indolence or sloth. That can take, when I first read that, I'm not slothful. Those sloths, I don't want to be one of those. Again, this is what the Enneagram, it's a spiritual formation tool. So if you read this and you're like, that felt like somebody just punched me in the gut, it's not one of those personalities that you take and you're like, ooh, you're like Superman. You're going to conquer the world and fly away and live happily ever after. It's meant to be a way to point you to your negative tendencies and help you get out of those. So 9's, the sloth can come across in a whole lot of ways. Doesn't mean they don't do things, but we tend to do kind of blend in the background and be very, very slow to step out into things. So that's something to know. For the rest of the series, what we hope to do is look at biblical characters who exemplify these types. We don't know their Enneagram type, but their stories in the Bible give us a picture of an archetypal story of what it's like to be that type. For the 9, that story is found in the life of Abraham. So I invite you to read along with me in the next slide in Genesis 12. Now the Lord said to Abraham, "Go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you." So Abram went as the Lord had told him. Abram was 75 years old when he departed from Haran. So here's a man who lived 75 years in one location. All of his family, all of his friends, all of his business was in one place. Then he felt God said, "Pick up and move, and I'll tell you when to stop." For a 9, this is an example of a very healthy 9. 9s are the kind of people that like things predictable, scheduled, and orderly. Because if it's predictable, then I know what to expect. And I know there's not going to be conflict that arises suddenly out of the blue. It just happens to be, I got my groove, right? Hakuna Matata. You all familiar with that? It's just that everything is good. Hakuna Matata. I found my place. So stepping out, again, that right action is extremely difficult for 9s. And so here we see Abraham acting as a healthy 9, stepping out into the unknown, risking, I don't know. I don't know who I'll meet. I don't know what will happen. I don't know. Chances are conflict will come, and we'll read about that in a bit. For me, just to give you an example, just a very honest example, I had felt called to be a pastor. I had studied, went to Bible college, seminary, and then the lead pastor who had founded this church was in transition, moving on, and there was this opening for me, and people encouraged me, step into that as lead pastor. For a 9, that is a very difficult thing. Again, it's stepping out. What if people disagree? People will leave the church. What if I screw it all up? What if it's just, I'm not that smart. I'm not that talented. There's all kinds of excuses we can use as 9s. Other types of personalities might see, oh yeah, I can do that. Boom, here I am. The 9s will not struggle with pride. If you're a 9, you're probably overly modest. So stepping out into that, I needed a lot of encouragement from people. Thankfully, I had a lot of support from people. My wife, my partner in life, has been my rock. If she weren't a part of my life, I would not be here doing what I do today. So for 9s, they need a lot of support to step out into those things. So next slide. In health and under stress. So if you look at this, by the way, is the symbol of the Enneagram, and there's all these lines in there. This has been one of the most helpful things because you act a certain way just in life. You act differently when you're under stress, and you act differently actually when you're taking steps to grow and to become more healthy. So the 9, and this is hard because we haven't done all of the types yet, but the 9 in health will move towards the 3. The 3 is the achiever. They get more stuff done than anybody else. These are the people that every time they check off something, it's like, yes, one more thing, cha-ching, one more thing, cha-ching. They do. When 9s are healthy, they move to the healthier side of the 3. And they step out, right action. And they'll and they become more achievement-oriented, less willing to stand in the background, and more, I'm going to show up to this world and step out. Here I am. Does that make sense, hopefully? Under stress, though, they'll go to the low side of the 6. The 6, sometimes called the loyalist, in their lowest unhealthy phases, they can be the most indecisive. They struggle a lot with fear, and so on the low side, the most indecisive, uncertain, feel inadequate. And so the 9 under stress will sometimes go to that place. I just don't know. I'm just not good enough. I stuck in ambiguity. It's just uncertain. So in health, they move one direction. In stress, they move another direction. And this is great if you're a 9 to observe yourself, to just see how you act and how that plays out for you, and notice that for you. We continue in the life of the Enneagram, or the life of Abraham, the life of the Enneagram, the life of Abraham. and follow on his life in Genesis 12, verses 10 through 13. After he had picked up, he moved, he settled to the ancient Near East, and then there was a famine in the land. Abraham went down to Egypt to reside there as an alien, for the famine was severe in the land. When he was about to enter Egypt, he said to his wife Sarah, I know well that you are a woman beautiful in appearance, and when the Egyptians see you, they will say, this is his wife, and then they will kill me, and they'll let you live. So say you are my sister, so that it may go well with me because of you. Wow, okay. And that my life will be spared on your account. So here we see a man that's like, there's a lot of things going on there. He looks at his wife, you're pretty fly. We're going down to this place. I think Pharaoh's gonna think you're pretty fly too. That's not gonna go well for me. I'd rather avoid that kind of conflict. So let's pretend like let's play brother and sister for a little bit. So this is the unhealthy side of the 9, avoiding conflict, not willing to step out into that. You can see this, actually, the ups and downs in Abraham's life. There's another instance where Abraham does the same thing, lies again about his wife. Again, not sure. Abraham was the one who was promised to be the father of many nations. And his wife said, hey, why don't you take my slave woman and, do what you do and have a child with her. And Abraham basically consents. Okay, I guess so. So you see that 9, that hesitation. All right, I'll go along with that. There's other ways that you could see the 9 in the life of Abraham. At one point, him and his nephew Lot, they dwell in this land together, and they realize, oh, it's not big enough. Our herds and stuff don't have enough grass. So what does Abraham do? As a true 9, he thinks of someone else first and says, Lot, I'll let you choose. If you want to go right, I'll go left. If you go left, I'll go right. So we follow the life of Abraham, and we see healthy versions of a 9 and unhealthy versions of a 9. 9s in unhealth will tend to, at times, veg out. I want to escape reality for a little bit. Sometimes it's called numbing out. They can do this in different ways. Some of it's kind of innocent, food, TV, whatever. Some of it can be extremely destructive, so pay attention to that. A few weeks ago, I was in one of those numbing out phases. For 2 evenings, I was like Netflix and food. And sometimes you're not even aware of this as a 9. And so my wife comes in, very nicely, says, Aaron, you're kind of, I feel like you might be like numbing out. So we know this language, so she can speak to that. She's like, are you trying to avoid something? And I was like, no, you don't know what you're talking about, whatever. Reacted, and then as soon as she left, I'm like, dang it. Oh, she's right. No, she's right. So the work then is to bring that up. What am I trying to avoid right here? To just pretend like doesn't exist, to numb out. Now there's not time, it's not always wrong to numb out. Sometimes you just need a break from life, I get that. But a 9's tendency in unhealth will be just to escape, to not deal with that. Thankfully I have a wife who's very gracious and helps me see in a very nice way. Thank you for that. What 9s do well, next slide. Some of the things that 9s do well is they see all points of view. This is their blessing and their curse. Now I feel like I am freezing up here. All right. Somebody will fix this. Thank you, guys. Like I never know up here but what's going on, but when I saw Dana in her jacket, I'm like, okay. At least you guys aren't falling asleep on me. That's good. So 9s, their blessing is they see all points of view. And that's also sometimes their curse. We'll get into that in a little bit. Which means they're very empathetic. They're non-judgmental listeners. If you want to go to somebody and you want them to tell you what to do, don't go to a 9, because they won't. If you want somebody to listen in a non-judgmental way, they're very good at that. They are naturally spiritual seekers and natural contemplatives. And I think part of this is, in an Enneagram language, they try to merge with whatever it is. Merge with someone else, merge with a group, which in very positive ways can be, I merge with the Spirit of God, God the Creator, all of creation. And we'll talk a little bit about the role creation plays in that. They bring people together. They're bridge builders. They're also naturally accepting and inclusive. So that's the high side of 9s. What about spiritual growth? Next slide. Ways that help a type 9 grow. First, spend time in nature. just getting out in nature. I'm willing to bet that almost all nines enjoy nature because it's peaceful. It's that serene state where I can go, be at rest and be at peace with things and just be. The next step, another step for spiritual growth for nines, is to journal or to wrestle with this question, what do I want? This is one of the hardest things for a nine to figure out. And when I first heard this, I'm like, I know what I want, whatever. But then I noticed in all kinds of different situations that I would go in, somebody would ask, where do you want to go for dinner? I don't know, I don't care. Nines know more what they don't want than what they want. So it's easier for them if they have options, like, no, not that. I don't know, these two. But asking, what do you want? And if you're a nine or you think you might be a nine, it's really healthy to ask yourself that on a regular basis. Other people will be like, how can you not know what you want? That's like the easiest core thing. You know what you want, you go after it. For nines, they'll tend to sit back. Also, notice when you numb out. Notice what you're trying to avoid. Numbing out could be anything. People use exercise, people use reading. It doesn't have to be an unhealthy thing. It could be a very healthy thing. Are you numbing out? Are you avoiding something? Another thing, accept discomfort and change, which is so hard for a nine, but nines are actually really adaptable people. It's just change throws us off a little bit. We're not, we don't seek it, we don't strive after it. Again, we like things to be orderly and scheduled. So change brings with it some sort of conflict, internal or external, or the potential for that. So accepting discomfort and change is a part of that, and this is key. Realize your potential and step into it. And this is probably the hardest thing for a nine. Again, nines are not going to be overly prideful people. They're going to be overly modest. And they're going to need, and I wanted to speak, if you're a partner to a nine, or you have a friend, a parent, sibling who is a nine, this is what I think they'll need more than anything else, which is what Molly has provided me. Unconditional love and support and encouragement. You can do this. I've seen you do this before. You're educated, you're trained. Step into this. Now, that, by the way, is different than pressure. Pressuring a nine is like the worst thing you can do because they'll just dig in their heels and burrow down. No, don't pressure me. Don't push me. But if you create this environment that's full of support, then you will watch and see your nine blossom. And it's a beautiful thing. Hopefully that resonates. How much of this is resonating for you if you're a nine, by the way? Any hands? Or you know a nine? Okay, that helps me. So hopefully most of these things, again, you won't resonate with 100%, that's okay. And if you're not a nine, some of these things are still good for you, maybe to wrestle with. So as we end the type nines, here's a quote, next slide. A quote that captures the nine from a book. We have sometimes called nine the crown of the Enneagram. That sounds a little arrogant. Stay with me. Because it is at the top. If you notice the symbol, it's at the top. Because it seems to include all of it. Nines have the strength of eights, the sense of fun and adventure of sevens, the dutifulness of sixes, the intellectualism of the fives, creativity of the fours, attractiveness of the threes, the generosity of the twos, and the idealism of the ones. Next slide. Before you start thinking, wow, they sound great. Next slide. However, what they generally do not have is a sense of really inhabiting themselves, a strong sense of their own identity. I cannot tell you how much of a struggle that has been, and how the Enneagram has helped me understand that I do that. It's easier for me to merge with somebody else's motivations, with somebody else's desires, to find out what I want and who I am. When I first took the Enneagram test 3 years ago, we did a whole sermon series at a church for 3 years ago. When I first took the test, I thought I was a type 2, which is the helper. And I took that and was like, that makes sense. I could see that. Yeah, it resonated. So I actually taught the type 2 sermon as a 2. And a year later, I was like, wait, there's things about this that don't quite fit. And then I took the test again, and I came out as a 1, and I'm like, I could see that. Yeah, there's things there that resonate. And then I sat with that, and eventually I was like, no, that's, and I took the test again, and I came out as a 3. And then I came out as a 4. And I thought for sure I was a 4. And eventually learned that's a very 9 thing to do. Because nines will see all the other types. They will see through all the other perspectives. Having and forming your own identity, knowing who you are and what you want is really, really important if you're a 9. And find those people that will support you unconditionally and encourage you to step out. Let's go ahead and watch as we transition to type 1. Let's go ahead and watch a short video on type 1.
All right, so with the Enneagram type 1, which is known as the perfectionist, their energy is that everything can always be improved. They can always be improved. It's very much on self-improvement. And they're very orderly. They like things done a certain way. And so even if it's just taking out the trash at a certain time, or having the toilet paper roll go over instead of under, life is just better when it's done that way. Ones tend to be pretty punctual, and if they're not, they're agitated with themselves for not being punctual. They will complete everything, make sure that it's all set and done, and there's nothing that can be improved upon. And because of that, they can often have a little bit of a analysis paralysis, trying to get things perfect before they get started. They want to have everything done the right way, and will sometimes not jump into things because they want it perfect. Some jobs that actually will attract a type 1 would be like accounting, or anything where you have to organize stuff and make sure that things are punctual and precise. And ones can also be known as the reformers. If there's anything wrong with society or anything wrong with a particular system, they'll be the ones who want to actually create the big change. So they can be like reformers in politics. And actually a famous one who I think is a reformer, I would actually put maybe Martin Luther, the Protestant reformer, and I would put John the Baptist. A good energy, a famous one, would be like Gandhi. The energy of Gandhi is like the spiritual energy of the 1 manifested very positively. And on the negative side, you would have someone like Osama bin Laden. Bernie Sanders would be another great example of a 1, trying to reform and change things that are in a state of disrepair, as he would say. One of the speaking styles of the 1 is like sermonizing. I think Apostle Paul is possibly a 1, and he wrote a lot of the sermons in the New Testament. And another thing about the 1s is they're often their biggest critic. Anything that you can find out that's wrong with a 1, they probably already thought of it. So a 1 will have like a very strong inner critic, typically stronger than a lot of other people around them. So that's one way you can identify a 1.
Because I'm reading about the traits of 1, and I was talking to them about this out there, and I was thinking like, okay, well, I'm justice oriented. Like, I'm very concerned about like doing the right thing. Like, I want all my jobs to be done well. Like, I'm very focused on like perfection and all these things, and I'm thinking like, well, who would want to be like this? Like, this is just the way that everyone should be. Like,
I remember from a very young age having a hard time with criticism. Very hard time. Like, I had to get it right. I had to be good at it. I had to be well liked. I did very well in school because of that. And I like to write out and think out and overthink responses to things because I don't want to get stuck. I don't want to let my anxiety get the best of me and not say something right, and then be either, belittled for it or have my argument like broken down. Like, it needs to be a rock solid argument.
Everything I see and everything I do, unfortunately, the first thing I notice is what's wrong with everything. And it is my goal in life to fix it. You really have to be in the right environment that is accepting of that criticism or the help that you're trying to give, really, because that's really what it is. We're not trying to criticize, we're trying to help you be better, help us be better.
When you come to the part in Genesis where it's like, and God looked upon what he created and it was good, type 1s are like, wait up, no, there's some mistakes here. And I even brought that up where like it's hard to see things as inherently good sometimes. And then I'm like, well, maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm just like having a hard time seeing what's good because I'm seeing everything that could be better.
like it's important to make things better, and like progress is important, and like working through issues is important, and people need to do that. Like there need to be ones in the world, but like coming to peace with the fact that like it doesn't have to all be me, and like I just have to let some things go. And
How do you perfect?
you don't. You can't.
You be Anne Hathaway.
That was a great phrase. How do you perfect? Ones are some of my favorite people. Next slide. Ones are sometimes called, thanks, Zach, the perfectionist or the reformer. I hate the word perfectionist because it's negative. And so I like the word reformer for ones much more. It helps a little bit clarify, but ones are true reformers. Their core motivation is to be virtuous and to improve and to be right. I know I have a couple family members who are ones, and I've talked to other ones, and while we were videoing those three, it's just sitting down and reflecting on all the ones I know. One thing that stands out is that ones almost all struggle with some sort of anxiety because there's always more to do. The beautiful part about the one is that they see what can be better, what needs to be better. And the struggle of that is that they see that all the time in every instance. And as Anthony hit on, it's the internal critic that's there. We all have one. I have one. But for ones, it's non-stop in their mind all the time, which can be very, very difficult. By the way, my wing, and we talked about this last week, you have a wing, the number on either side, my wing is 1. And so there's a lot there that I resonate. So I hope to do my fellow ones justice in helping us understand this type of personality. Next slide. Some adjectives that describe a one. Idealistic, in a positive way. They see a vision of what could be. They're very rational, purposeful, self-controlled, disciplined, orderly, determined. And in the negative space can sometimes be critical, perfectionistic, or resentful. These are the kinds of people that get really annoyed when you go to the grocery store and it's like 15 items or less, and they're like, you have a whole shopping cart full. Obviously, it's more than 15. You should be in this lane, right? They see those things. They stand out to them. They probably dislike nothing more than somebody who's just slacking off, who can't pull their weight. Come on. And that's hard because on the positive side, they'll see the potential in people. And they're like, you should be way down here, and you're just slowly edging on 1 or 2. Does that help? Hopefully understand? Next slide, the vice and the virtue. The virtue is serenity. When they move forward and become healthy, they're much more serene. When in their unhealth, there is a sort of resentful anger that could surface because it's not good enough. They're not doing enough. There's more that could be. So just be aware of that if you're a type 1 or you gravitate toward that type. So as Anthony mentioned, 2 of the types in scriptures, and 2 fantastic people, some of my favorite people, John the Baptist and the Apostle Paul, are both kind of this archetypal picture of this person. So we read together in Matthew. You can read along on the screen. This is from John the Baptist. I need to read up here actually. In those days, John the Baptist appeared in the wilderness in Judea, proclaiming, "Repent, for the kingdom of heaven has come near." This is the one of whom the prophet Isaiah spoke when he said, "The voice of one crying in the wilderness, prepare the way of the Lord, make his path straight." Next slide. Now John wore clothing of camel's hair, with a leather belt around his waist, and his food was locust and wild honey. Pause here. We'll come back to this at the very end. Ones will sacrifice more than any other type for others. Something to know. And then the people of Jerusalem and all Judea were going out to him, and all the region along the Jordan. And they were baptized by him in the river Jordan, confessing their sins. But when he saw many Pharisees and Sadducees coming for baptism, he said to them, "You brood of vipers, who warned you to flee the wrath to come?" Next slide. "Bear fruit worthy of repentance. Do not presume to say to yourselves, 'We have Abraham as our ancestor.' For I tell you, God is able from these stones to raise up children to Abraham. Even now the axe is lying at the root of the trees. Every tree, therefore, that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire." Whopping! So this is a little bit of the one energy. One, if you want somebody to speak truth to power, 9s will definitely struggle. 1s are the people that will step up. And those 8s, that 8 energy that we heard last week. These are the people that will speak truth to power, that will say, "No, that is wrong. You're being hypocritical. you need to stop doing this. Just because you think you're in this family tradition that you're all good, no, you need to bear fruit, love, peace, forgiveness, and justice. Your ear needs to be open to the cries of the marginalized. So we see the one recognized in John the Baptist. Paul the Apostle Paul was originally Saul. Saul was a kingly name, the first king of Israel. And he changed his name after a conversion experience to Paul, which means little one. Interesting. Especially in Paul, I think we see a very healthy one. By the way, just a side note, in case you're like, wait, he wrote some things in the New Testament about women and stuff. Probably not him. Probably someone else writing in his name. So there's a lot of negative connotations that can be associated with Paul, but I think I think very highly of Paul. So let's read together in Philippians. Next slide. Beware of the dogs. Beware the evil workers. Beware of those who mutilate the flesh. You can kind of see a little bit of the similar tones as John the Baptist here. For it is we who are the circumcision, who worship in the Spirit of God and boast in Christ Jesus and have no confidence in the flesh, even though I too have reason for confidence in the flesh. If anyone else has reason to be confident in the flesh, I have more. Circumcised on the 8th day, a member of the people of Israel, the tribe of Benjamin, a Hebrew born of Hebrews, as to the law, a Pharisee, as to zeal, a persecutor of the church, as to righteousness under the law, blameless. Yet, I feel like he's like did a mic drop there. Boom! Yet whatever gains I had, these I have come to regard as loss because of Christ. More than that, I regard everything as loss because of the surpassing value of knowing Christ Jesus my Lord. For his sake, I have suffered the loss of all these things. I regard them as rubbish in order that I may gain Christ. So here you have an archetypal one. It says, I've done this and this and this, and I've worked hard. I've been the top, the Pharisee, the best of the best. I did everything you could. But you know what I found? All of that I've let go of. I've released all of that, and I found this thing called grace, living into the life of Jesus that has transformed me, and it's there for you. It's not about works. It's not about doing all of these things, but it's about something else. So we see this healthy one saying, yeah, there's all kinds of things we could be doing better, but at the core is this idea of grace. So next slide. So in health, ones will go towards the high side of a 7. 7s are the life of the party. Any 7 will be the most energetic, joyful kind of person. So that doesn't mean a 1 will automatically become the life of the party. They'll go to the high side, which means that inner critic will begin to fade back. They can enjoy being there, being present, right? They're more self-accepting and accepting of other people in that moment. Now, on the low side, ones, when they're under stress, will go to the 4 according to the Enneagram. Their inner critic works in hyperdrive, which can cause a lot of anxiety and a lot of resentment and anger, and also can lead to some depression as they ruminate. Their mind just works and works and works and works and works and kind of digs themselves into a hole, right? So we see the high part and the low part. Next slide. What do ones do well? They find more effective ways of doing things. They're the kind of people when something's not working, you want, hey, look at this. They'll say, right here, right here, right here. They're always improving things, making things better. They're good at developing others because they see the potential in other people. They're great mentors. Paying attention to details. They're usually very detail-oriented. I dot every I, cross every T. I've looked at this. I know this is good. This is set. This is ready to go. They're also phenomenal leaders. Some of the greatest leaders are ones. And they're great teachers. They're clear. They're concise. They got their ducks in an order. They know how to speak and what to speak and when to speak. Very powerful people. Next slide. Some spiritual formation growth from ones. Time and nature. Similar to 9s, ones need time in nature, but for other reasons, because time in nature will kind of allow that serenity to take place. It's hard to perfect or build upon nature. You just go out and you just enjoy. There's nothing you can do to make it better. You just are. So that's helpful. Scheduling rest and relaxation. For some people, it's like, yeah, of course, that's the best part of life. For ones, this can actually be hard. because they're so motivated by doing, working better, that finding ways to rest, and they'll probably need to schedule it. Say, I need to just allow myself some space to just be, to enjoy. Intentionally surrender outcomes. This one's hard for ones. It's hard for me. One of the things I do every Sunday on my way here to church is I preach a sermon most Sundays. And I say, okay, show up. 4 things. Show up, pay attention, do your best, release the outcome. This is important for ones. You do what you can, and then you release it. For ones, there's always something, oh, I could correct this. If it's a paper, it's not quite good enough, and you hold on. That analysis paralysis that Anthony talked about can be true of a ones more than any other type. It can be true of all people, but for them, it can be most true. So you do what you can and just say, okay, I let it go. Free little birdie, fly into the world. I release you. Journaling can be helpful, but the journaling here is the more, what is going on within me? What's the internal critic saying? And getting that out on paper. And then asking yourself, now if I talked to somebody this way, what would I feel? If I was this hard on somebody else, how would I feel about that? So even writing about how that internal critic and paying attention to that, because that's huge growth for a one, realizing, oh, I have this internal critic, realizing what it says and journaling that, and being aware of those things can be helpful. And also the last one, beware of the urge to correct others. Let's go back there for a second. Pause here. Again, they can be some of the greatest mentors. But it's important for ones to know that not everybody is in a space or wants to be mentored or told what to improve. And so for a one, it might be knowing I have the urge and the desire to always try to improve other people. Maybe I just need to pause for a second, ask a few questions, see if they're open to it. Kind of put out little feelers. And if so, then maybe I will. But be careful that you will see what needs to be improved way more than anybody else will. For you, it might be like, this is so obvious. Oh my gosh, it's blaring. Here. For you, it might be, but for that person, it might not be. And they may or may not be ready for that. So how do you speak to that in a more gentle way? Next slide, a quote for ones. And at this time, I'll invite the worship team to kind of come back on up, if you would. Ones have a sense of mission that leads them to want to improve the world in various ways. Using whatever degree of influence they have, they strive to overcome adversity, particularly moral adversity, so that the human spirit can shine through and make a difference. They strive after higher values, even at the cost of great personal sacrifice. Some of my favorite people in the world are ones. Plato was a one. Joan of Arc was probably a one. Gandhi was probably a one. Nelson Mandela, probably a one. People who see what is, what shouldn't be, and they have a vision to see what could be. And at the same time, they also not only have the vision, but they have the drive to make the change. One of my favorite people in the world, author and speaker Richard Rohr, is a one. And so he talks about it like this. He reflects on the fact that he started this nonprofit in Albuquerque, New Mexico. He's traveled all over the world multiple different times speaking. He's written dozens of books. And he said, I could not have done that without that kind of one motivation, that one energy that pushes me to move forward. An interesting thing, when I've watched some of his videos as a younger Richard Rohr, he has that sort of John the Baptist kind of feel to him. Great teacher, but boom, 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 boom. When you see him now, he has a sort of jolly St. Nicholas feel to him. I mean, you just watch him, he is that version of that one moving to the six that's like, okay, I'm doing my work and I'm surrendering what happens and I don't have to control everybody else and I can be at peace in that. We need healthier versions of all the types. Hopefully this gives us some kind of framework to allow us to begin to grow in better ways.